Again, all right. So I am Catherine Mattice. I'm the founder and CEO of Civility Partners. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you've been on my webinars before, you know that I love, love, love the chat. So by all means, keep it going. I have it open in a big giant window right here. So you can ask me questions. You can share ideas with each other. You can put your LinkedIn so you can connect. I'm not the only one who knows stuff, so I want to hear from you all as well. Again, just to introduce myself a little further, Catherine Mattice. I have been running Civility Partners for 17 years. I founded Civility Partners way back when, right out of graduate school at SDSU, actually. I found myself working in a toxic work environment and ended up doing all of my graduate research on the topic of workplace bullying. 17 years later, I've written a book for Wiley's For Dummies series. So I have the ironically titled book, Navigating a Toxic Workplace for Dummies, available. I've got over 3 million learners on LinkedIn. My ideas and how to turn around culture and how to manage culture have been featured in a lot of cool places over the years. We've had almost 300 clients over the last 17 years in a huge array of industries. We've been in global organizations. We've been in almost any kind of world I can think of, although every now and again I get surprised. We had a client who did, they sold plasma to other people for science. I was like, okay, not an industry I knew existed. So we're going to do some giveaways here at the end of the webinars. So if you're super interactive, then you win or you have an opportunity to win a copy of my book. Jenny, my marketing manager and lovely assistant and person who makes all of this happen, I just show up. She does everything else, so she deserves a kudos. Jenny will be sort of watching the chat, and if you're being active, then she'll add you to her list of potential winners there. So she'll take that on. So we're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about kind of trends from 2025 and what we are expecting for future trends. And really, I'm all about, as you know, giving actionable advice. And so we are going to talk about all of the things that you need to be doing with these various trends. And again, please feel free to share what you're doing as well. Ooh, we've got Qatar in here. Goodness, from the UK. Love this. Thank you so much for joining me. We've got people from all over the world and we've got people from all over the United States. So this should be a good conversation. So you're all already got your fingers moving. So let's go ahead and kick this off. What are some of the workplace trends you've observed or experienced this year? So what are your thoughts on what the trends are? Sri Lanka, goodness gracious, love this. Disengagement. Yep, that's a trend. Give me some other trends that you are seeing, experiencing, aware of. AI, remote work, more disengagement, returning to work, more AI, job hugging. Amanda, I don't know if I've heard that word, that phrase before. Can you enlighten me? What is job hugging? More management training. Man, it seems like that's been a trend for a long time, huh? That managers need more training. Burnout, communication preferences, political upheaval. What do you mean? Have a political upheaval? Just kidding. Uh, Decreasing positions, but no work redistribution, emphasis on mental health. We're disconnected. Job hugging, workplace trend where employees remain in their current jobs despite being disengaged. Okay. I thanks for teaching me something. Incivility, yep. Lots of reorganizing, reorganizing, reorganizing. I can say this here because you all are in the HR space in some way, shape, or form. Johnny Taylor over there at SHRM, he said he's reorganizing, but he didn't tell anybody. He made all these decisions all on his own, but I don't think we've seen the fallout of what exactly that looks like just yet. Yeah. Okay, Johnny. Less prioritization of HR. Yeah, that stinks because HR has already been fighting the good fight to, get that seat at the table. So if HR is getting prioritized even less, we're going backwards. So, um, this is just a list that I'm going to go through. It doesn't mean or discount any of the things you said, just for purposes of the webinar. Here's some of what I feel like I've been seeing. One is quiet quitting. I think we heard that before. Um, People aren't quitting, they're just doing the minimal. I think the old word for that was presenteeism, a similar scenario. Presenteeism and or quiet quitting is about, I'm at work physically and I'm doing stuff, but I'm not giving you my all. You're disconnected. Yeah. Quiet firing is another trend. So here's now Jenny will have to add job hugging to this. So quiet firing is when an employer is sort of subtly trying to push people out. If we were talking about that in the context of harassment or discrimination, that would be disparate impact, right? Or there's another word for it. Maybe one of you can put it in there. Um, what is the word? Constructive discharge. There we go. So quiet firing is sort of like that. Thanks, Rebecca. It's sort of like that, but it's, kind of isolating people, putting people down in the stock room with the red stapler. If you've seen Office Space, you know what I'm talking about. Career cushioning is people basically staying, maybe it ties into job hugging. They're sort of staying in their job because they're not sure where else to go, but they're spending some of their time at work looking for a job, padding their resume. Maybe they take on something at in your workplace really just to be able to leave. I'm going to take on this project so I can add it to my resume and then I'll have a better resume when I leave. So that's career cushioning. Certainly remote and hybrid work is a trend. Lots and lots of low employee engagement, as you all know. It's that number just seems to keep falling and falling and falling. And of course, the rise and fall of D&I, it's been a really hot topic. And then during COVID, George Floyd was murdered, made it even bigger impact and splash. And now all of a sudden, we're sort of pulling back from that. Let's see. Managers with no management training, that's your largest battle. Yeah. Well, we can help with that, Carmen. Let's see. Too many leaders and not enough doers. Let's see. I saw if Johnny worked with Catherine a couple years ago, then it's entirely likely that he wouldn't have been in this mess. I agree. I've been joking that Johnny took my word civility. I've been around for 17 years and he just started talking about it. So let's talk about culture and how it exists, because that's what we are. We're culture consultants. And so culture is always at the heart of our conversations. So this is how culture works. And I want you to be thinking about your answers to these questions. So we call this the oil model. Culture exists within the organization's behavior, how people behave, and the behavior of the individuals, and leadership team behavior. So organizational behaviors, things like processes, technology, how departments work together, systems. So the organization itself is behaving in a way with all of that, the personality of the organization. And then, of course, individual behavior is everyone from top to bottom. So the CEO, he or she has, or they has individual behavior that influences culture. The receptionist or the file clerk or the intern has individual behavior that influences culture. So each and every person with their own behavior influences culture. And then leadership team refers to that top leadership, the C-suite, maybe some people right around underneath the C-suite. How does the leadership team behave? How do they make decisions? Are they making good decisions? Are they giving resources to something like culture? So this is how culture functions. So let's start. Actually, we're going to start with the individual behavior. And you feel free to put a few things in there in the chat there. So how do you want people to behave? Put some answers in there. And I agree with all of you about Johnny. I don't know how he's still there. Usually after this kind of a thing, CEOs are let go. Mohammed, you have a question? Go ahead and type it in the chat and we will answer it for you. Okay, so these are all things you want from people: professionalism, clear, kind, being accountable. Okay, so then the second question, moving up to pink, is what does your organization do or not do that helps or hinders that behavior? So using, I saw manager training in there. If you're wanting managers to hold people accountable and to be accountable themselves, what does the organization do to facilitate that behavior? And what does the organization do that's hindering that? So, for example, if you're saying, I want people to be accountable for their work, but your performance management system, doesn't have that key element in it, then the organization's behavior is opposite or not in alignment with what the organization is seeking for its individuals. Yeah, so by the way, we do manager training. We have a really great program if anybody's looking for that. It's my webinar, so I can say things like that. Normally, I don't when I'm doing a partner webinar. Uh, yeah, so, and that's another example. You're all talking about training. So we've all been complaining about managers since I've been in HR. I mean, I've been in HR for 2 decades, more than 2 decades. I feel like we've been having this conversation about managers needing training since the beginning, but somehow a lot of organizations aren't doing it. But you can't expect managers to do all the things you want them to do as managers. You can't influence their individual behavior as managers unless the organization is giving training, has performance systems in place, all of the things that go into helping people do that. And that, of course, would mean that your leadership team's behavior has to include, yes, we're giving resources to HR so they can find a vendor to do training for our managers. Let's see, I love these. Unfortunately, we have a problem with people complaining about each other to management without resolving it, and then management has to be the go-between. Yeah, so that's Heather, and I hear that a lot from HR too, that people come to me with fires. They need to solve those things on their own. Well, that tells me that there's a training problem. Potentially, Heather, all of those individuals need some training on managing their own conflict. And the organization has to look at itself. What is the organization doing or not doing that's facilitating that conflict, that's facilitating people complaining to managers instead of solving it? So we never just want to look at the people's behavior and what do we need to train people to do. We also have to say, what's the organization doing to support that? So I'm going to talk about 3 specific trends. Certainly, there are tons of trends out there that we could pick. These are the 3 that I'm wanting to dive in on. So, of course, first off is AI, automation. We've all it's crazy how just all of a sudden AI existed, right? So AI can be really helpful for you. AI can streamline, some of your processes. I know it makes me more productive because I often kind of start something off in AI and then I take that document and mold it into what I want it to be. I'm sure you're all doing that as well. You can do research on it. On AI, you can ask it to create a report for you about trends in your industry, something that would take you several weeks to do over time. You can just type in there, tell me about trends in my industry related to compensation, turnover, all of that, job openings. And then AI can potentially personalize the employee experience. It can also depersonalize the employee experience. So here's a lovely disconnect. We know they're everywhere in our world of HR, that this is a very clear example of that disconnect. So in this survey by HR Dive, the 60% of the C-suite said that they've involved HR from the start because HR needs to be involved. After all, AI is about the humans, which are resources, right? How can those humans use AI as a resource? And 30% of HR agreed with that same statement. So, very clear disconnect. I got to see what's going on in the chat real quick. Yep, 20 different countries certainly makes it difficult when we've got people from all over. Norms and cultural needs in a worldwide business. Carmen, we've got or Jenny, maybe you could just post it in the chat right now for me. So Carmen and anybody else who has a global workforce, we've got a list of ways that we have helped global organizations dispense learning so that each geographic region, gets something that's right for them. So Jenny, maybe put that in the chat and then you can take a look at that, Carmen. Let's see. A new design of training is needed because most training doesn't impact individuals. Yeah, and that's right, Susan. Training is just a blip in time. I go to a 2 hour training in the conference room or on Zoom. It doesn't influence me unless the organization has a whole strategy around that program, right? Who is HR for? In my organization, it's for the employer. Where do the employees go? Crystal, great comment. I want to address it. HR is for both. And when I first joined HR, the person who brought me, and I was the receptionist, and this woman said, "We need an HR department. You're going to do it, and you'll report to me." And I remember she said, HR has to walk the line. You're on everybody's side. So when an employer thinks you're just there as a risk manager and to run payroll and make sure we have benefits, then sure, then HR is for the employer. But that does not tie into what we need to be focusing on, which is employee experience. Employees should also feel like HR is on their side. So I'm often talking about how HR needs to be a partner to everyone. HR needs to walk the floor, get to know people, have conversations with people. If somebody's in conflict, they should come to HR not to report it, but to get guidance and advice from HR. So HR should be a partner and mentor to everybody else. That is how I see HR. So the problem with AI, back to our trend here, is that C-suite may have a hard time choosing the right task to automate because they're not in the everyday work of the people. Jenny's my marketing manager. I can't tell her what to automate. I have a few ideas, but she's the one who does the work, right? So Jenny would have to choose the task that she wants to automate. Some companies are all in while others are being really slow. So there's kind of a real disconnect to kind of how people are implementing AI. And over a third of HR leaders in this survey said that there was not enough clarity in what employees do. So everybody needs to take a step back and maybe ask employees, what could you be automating? What are some things that you do now that maybe AI could solve for you? And I think that's a good exercise for you to ask everyone in your organization to do, right? Our company is doing a slow rollout of AI by department. Karen, I think that is probably the best way. Sorry, I just want to go back to the comments here. Walking the line is a perfect way to frame the function. Yeah. Doing your best with a lot of training. Leadership is not open to feedback. Yes, we see that. I see a hand went up. If you have a question, just go ahead and stick it in the chat and I will answer it for you. HR doesn't understand the word confidential. Yeah, that may be if that's the case in your organization. I think there's a lot for HR to learn. Let me just read. Okay, awesome. Okay, so here are some problems with AI that may be going on in your workforce. 31% of AI consumers admit to entering personal or sensitive information into Gen AI tools. So 14% of that 31% from this survey said that they have essentially uploaded company trade secrets, details, email addresses, information about the employer. So if you do not have an AI policy in place right at this moment, I can almost guarantee you that some of your company's proprietary information is being uploaded into the World Wide Web of ChatGPT or any of the others. So super important that you, while you're figuring out how to use AI, that you put a policy in place that people not upload, company documentation into something like ChatGPT. So step one, the policy. Step two, ask people to kind of like a task, a time monitor, have you ever done a time study where you've asked employees to kind of write down what they're doing throughout the day just to understand their job? You could ask people to write down things they do that they don't like doing that could be automated. How can ATS catch better candidates? Conrad, I actually have a very specific scenario from ZipRecruiter later on in the presentation, so sit tight and I will answer that question for you. Yeah, and even with the policy in place, you can't necessarily monitor it, but you can start with that and then, ooh, an AI committee. That's a good idea. I like it. Yeah. Okay. So just some more information on AI. Today's AI systems are already capable of taking over tasks equivalent to 11.7% of the US labor market. So, we've seen a lot. What this refers to is essentially we've seen a lot of in news articles about large organizations laying off, 30,000 people because they've replaced their jobs with AI. And so while certain jobs are being replaced because of AI, um, other jobs are being created. And I think ultimately what's going to happen is everybody's going to have to work with AI, that way you're not replaced by AI. Um, so some other problems. Companies are already considering the hybrid human plus AI staffing model. So what I've been seeing a lot of when I've been doing research on AI is that AI becomes a teammate. Here in my team, we've even joked about, and we haven't done it yet, but we say things like, "Oh, well, ask what ChatGPT thinks," or "Let's start there." But maybe if we name ChatGPT with a name, Millie or whatever it is, that we start to see AI as an additional person or set of hands that we can lean on. And so I've been seeing a lot of that trend. And from there, you can start sort of performance managing AI, right? So you can say, I want to be sure that AI is giving me accurate information, that it's concise, that it's in the voice of my company or my own personal voice. And so you can create some sort of KPIs for your AI. And I think that's going to be the future. Humans will never be fully replaced, but AI will become a team member. Yeah, and I mean, I know you're all using it for policies and proofreading and all of the things. Okay. Oh, Conrad, here's that example for you around recruiting. So it was Zapier. Zapier opened a software engineering role and received several thousand applications in 48 hours. Zapier commits to responding to every candidate within 7 days. They also found with this post that 30% of applications were fraudulent, fake identities, unverifiable credentials, and so forth, and there were deep fakes on the live interviews. So, what Zapier has committed to is they've adjusted the process to account for this. So, according to the article that you can see the link there on the slide. After an initial application review by a team member, more candidates can move forward to a 15 to 20-minute AI-led screening call. So AI is leading or doing that initial call. That AI recruiter is asking the same questions that a human was asking. So this also helps because now candidates can do the interview at a time that works for them as opposed to during the recruiter's work hours. AI then summarizes the responses, and then a human steps in, and a human recruiter reviews the notes and the transcript and the recording. And then that same human recruiter can decide if they're moving the candidate forward to the more human experience. So that's an example of just bringing AI into the fold and using it as a teammate. And of course, AI can't replace a whole lot of things. So humans, while we can replace some jobs with AI, we're not going to replace humans. I think about ATMs are a great example. Do you remember the days when you went to the bank? There was a teller there at the window, not an ATM. And when ATMs were developed, of course, bankers and tellers are thinking my job's going to be replaced. But no, it also created jobs. Somebody's got to make the ATM. Somebody's got to repair the ATMs. So we need to think about kind of what are all the opportunities for AI. Are you losing out on the beauty of the human interaction using the recruiting process if AI is being used? Well, that's what Zapier did was make that initial screening call with AI, but then a human steps in. So yes and no. Yes, you're missing that initial screening call, human interaction, but Zapier also can't manage, 30,000 applications for the same job. Let's see. I have leaders who've been using AI for basic tasks. And it feels impersonal. Yeah, I mean, it might be worth it to do kind of an AI workshop in your organization. Perhaps you could ask people how they're using it. I mean, another way to use it is to say, I have a meeting with the my boss and this other person. My boss's personality is this other person's personality is that. Here's what the meeting's about. Can you give me some tips for making it a successful meeting? So you can use it as a coach. Um, that's a more personal way to use it. So my tips regarding AI, take control of it. You don't want your employees going rogue and uploading random things that belong to the company out there into the world. So as soon as you can, start using selected tools. If you're on Teams and using Microsoft, maybe, you could maybe at the very least mandate everybody use, what is it? Copilot? Is that what it is in Microsoft? We use Google. Align AI adoption with human-centered strategies. AI is a collaborative team member. Understand the workforce's needs. So again, don't try to implement AI or don't let leadership force AI on people without even really understanding what people need for AI or what they need AI for. And HR ultimately has to decide, where you're going to use AI. I have a little treat for you. If you email us at info@civilitypartners.com or you pull out your phone and take that QR code, it will immediately email. It'll just take you to a mail to link and you hit send and it'll send and Jenny will know to respond to your email. So we made an AI prompt playbook for culture work. So check it out. You'll see that QR code again. So don't worry if you didn't get it. Gemini, we use Gemini. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. AI, somebody has to manage AI, right? So just because you use AI, it doesn't mean it's replacing you. Okay. Um, the second trend I mentioned we were going to talk about is to focus on well-being and mental health. And I still think employers are very much doing it wrong. So obviously, when employees are feeling good, they're more productive, the company's more profitable. Um, we see a lot about well-being, and so that's a good thing, but well-being is still wrong. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So half of the workforce makes up more than 40% of the market spend on wellness products. 84% of US consumers say wellness is a top priority. That means that millennials and Gen Z represent 51% of the workforce and 25% of wellness, and they're 25% of wellness consumers. So more than 40% of the market spend is half of the workforce, and that workforce is Gen Z and millennials. So you can't get away from wellness or having wellness. This is just a sign or an indicator of how important wellness is. Um, so Gen Zers and millennials are spending more on discretionary wellness purchases. So there's a lot of TikTok shops, for example. So I think some of that comes with just the doom scrolling, as it's called. Where Gen Z and millennials are buying those discretionary things, health tracking devices, massage devices, beauty apps, TikTok shops, those kinds of things. Um, Mental health report. Employees at companies supporting mental health are 2 times as likely to report no burnout or depression, 3 times more likely to report no anxiety, 3 times more likely to trust the leadership. We've got 50% of the workforce saying that they've got moderate to severe burnout, depression, or anxiety. So wellness is not a nice to have. You have to have it. Wellness encompasses mental health too, right? So 67% of workers talk about their own mental health at work. That's a great sign. That's progress. 41% of workers have talked about their own mental health at work in the past month, and only 60% said they got a positive response. So, going back to that whole thing on manager training, managers need training on how to be vulnerable with their team and allow other people to be vulnerable too. And it is work. I'm not saying everybody, it's a cry fest or we're all singing kumbaya, but if humans are a resource for the organization needs to treat those humans like humans, and that means making room for how people are feeling in their mental health. So this is an example of a culture of burnout and how these three things all work together. So the organization up top there, if teams are expected to deliver without all the right tools and staffing, we talked about earlier, uh, people being laid off, but no redistribution of the work. There's this constant do more with less. We've been hearing that phrase for years, and there's no boundaries. So that might be an example of what the organization is doing, the organization's behavior. So as a result, people are saying yes to things, they're calling out sick, they're having a hard time concentrating, they're in conflict because they're not getting along. And leadership's role in that is that perhaps they're creating pressure, they're ignoring when team members look tired or need a break, and they're treating everything as a high priority. I've been in clients like that, it's no good. So, this is an example of a culture of burnout. A culture of wellness looks different. So the organization can be providing accurate resources to avoid burnout. They can be, um, recognizing when they lay people off, we've got to figure out how to move things around, make it easier for people or as easy as we can. Maybe some policies and systems that require turning things off at night and no tolerance for toxic behavior. If the organization is behaving in these ways, and of course that's a short list, there's a lot more to be in that list. If the organization's behaving in those ways, then individuals get the impression it's okay to say no. It's okay to take a vacation without feeling guilty. It's easier to concentrate because they know the organization has their back. And then, of course, leadership would need to be empowering employees to become more efficient. So, recognizing this isn't working, and part of the burnout is the inefficiency in this process, constantly acknowledging the good work and putting resources towards programs that minimize burnout. I want to see what's going on here in the chat. I work in an HR department for a mental health company, and our employees are critical of the mental health support they receive or don't receive if you have resources for the mental health industry specifically. Steph, that's a great comment, and thank you for sharing. My advice, well, let me go to the next slide. My advice around that is, so I don't have anything specifically for your realm. In a way, we're sort of mental health. We're hearing a lot of toxic things going on here, right? So we maybe understand a little bit about what a mental health professional is going through because they're taking in everybody else's stuff, right? Beyond their own. The thing about wellness, and this is where I say employers are doing it wrong, and you're going to hear me say this again. Let me go back to this. The organization plays a role in burnout, right? But what organizations tend to do is give individuals resources. So what organizations are doing, and perhaps yours is, Steph, is saying something like, well, I use my friend, she works at Kaiser, for example. They've been mandated that appointments should only be 15 minutes, absolute max 20. So they're being tasked with seeing more patients throughout the day. So Kaiser's putting pressure on people. You need to get people in and out within 20 minutes, no matter what their ailment. You got max 20 minutes. But then, and I don't know, but just using Kaiser as an example. And then they might say, well, here is an app to help you sleep at night. That will help with your mental health and well-being. what they've done is misaligned, right? The organization's putting pressure. The pressure is what's causing the burnout, but they're giving individuals something to alleviate it. So organizations are really doing wellness as a band-aid when the organization needs to really ask itself, how are we causing burnout as an organization? And if we really want people to not be burned out, what do we need to change as an organization? McKinsey Health Institute, they have a research article out from a few years ago around how toxic work environments are the burnout. That's where most burnout comes from. So it's not about giving people tools. It's about looking at what ways the organization is creating the burnout. Let's see. I tell managers that if the opportunity is for vulnerability, the manager goes first. If the ask is for problem solving or ideas, the manager goes last. Ooh, I love that, Anne. That's great advice. We have Canopy for our EAP, and our employees really like it. We also offer Headspace. So thank you, Mandy. Those are great tips. But then we're back to the question. So those are tools for individuals to use to, and so the onus becomes on them to solve their wellness problem. But Mandy, I suggest you take a step back and say, well, what's the organization doing that causes problems with mental health and well-being? And how do we solve those problems? So looking at it from a comprehensive, um, bigger picture than just on the individuals. Let's see, we have employees talking about burnout and their health. We provided confidential access to additional mental health resources. We held a meeting to advise them of that. However, we discovered that those resources that were being paid for are not being utilized. At a loss to understand what to do. Roseanne, thank you for that. Another great comment. So again, what that's telling me is your organization has provided this additional resource, and kudos to you for doing that. My guess is that people don't use that resource because they, A, potentially wonder if their, resources are confidential. So maybe they're thinking the employer's paying for this, and somehow the employer will be made aware of my mental health issues, and I'd like to keep them confidential. So it could be a sign of lack of trust. I also think it could be a sign that your organization is causing the burnout. So they probably, it feels a little bit like a slap in the face to say, hey, we just laid off a bunch of people and everyone's got to work extra hours. And also, here's a mental health professional for you, right? Okay. Considering what you said, what is your opinion about mindfulness apps for employees? Like I said, I think mindfulness apps are great. Like give those resources, but don't give them unless like you have to take a step back and you have to solve the core problem, which is the organization itself is causing the burnout. So don't if the organization's causing the burnout, don't put the onus on employees to manage their mental health. Okay, I got to keep moving. I'm realizing what time it is. I'm having such a good time with all of your comments. Um, I wish that our associates utilize our EP. Yeah. So, and I'll just say this is what surveys are for. We do a workforce survey. It looks at culture. It looks at all sorts of things, engagement, job satisfaction, trust in leaders, trust in each other, relationships, inclusivity. It looks at a lot of things. And we customize our surveys. So if you're wondering how come people aren't using the things that we're giving them, a survey is a great way for us to find the answer for you. So please do reach out if you'd like to explore that with us. And this is another example. So Glassdoor reviews of senior management indicate that employees have been losing faith in their leadership since the latter half of 2023. Well, guess what? If you don't trust your leader, then you're going to feel burned out because you're working hard for somebody that you don't respect, right? So there's this disconnect between employees and leaders. And these Glassdoor reviews mention that there's a disconnect. So this is an issue. The organization needs to look at itself. And we all know people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, right? So here are my tips for you related to mental health and well-being. First of all, expand what that means and make sure you have a very clear definition. Mental health and well-being is a very subjective, loose term. What does it include in your own organization? I just saw a webinar invite pop up in my inbox yesterday about menopause and talking more about menopause in the workplace, because that is a women's health issue. And if we don't talk about it, which we currently don't, then we can't solve it, right? So expand what your definition means and then define exactly what you mean for your own employees. So have like almost like a employer value proposition related to what your mental health and well-being initiatives are meant to solve. And conduct that survey. As I mentioned, please let us help you with that. I was told TMI when I brought up menopause. See, Jennifer, it's a perfect example. It shouldn't be like that. Could I send you info? Ooh, we've got some. So the menopause webinar is with Achieve Engagement. Achieve Engagement. So just head on over to their website. I'm sure you can register. They're one of our partners as well. We do webinars with them. Um, and then you can understand the root causes. So what are you doing or not doing as an organization that causes burnout? And then you address that. So part of what mental health is, yes, giving people some apps, but don't give them resources if you're not actually solving the core problem. I think it just feels like a kick in the face. So if you'd like to understand what your own survey is measuring, feel free to use this. So again, QR code, it'll set you up for an email. You just hit send and Jenny will send you all the things, all the things. Okay, lastly, shifting from DEI. So 1 in 5 companies eliminated DEI since Trump's re-elections, and then others are maybe replacing that phrase because now diversity is a dirty word, right? Now they're replacing it with a different word so they can still do what they were doing. Sorry about that. I hate when that happens. And something to think about is that no matter what, whether you can call it diversity and inclusion or not, people need to belong. People need to belong. So no matter what, you can focus on inclusivity, even if you have to call it something different or even sort of unrelated to, you don't have to lead conversations about race in the organization if you're not allowed to, unfortunate, but you can still bring in conversations around how to make sure everybody belongs. Let's see. Yes, Canada's got some great resources. Somebody said, interesting. Is your workforce survey working? Yeah, let me just put this back up. So Clay, this handout basically kind of highlights different kinds of surveys. So for example, if you're doing an engagement survey, chances are you're not actually looking at your culture. Um, an engagement survey measures levels of engagement, but it's not giving you insight into your actual culture. So that's what this handout is about. It kind of gives you things to be thinking about with the survey you might currently be doing and decide if maybe you're not getting all the information you thought you were getting. So what we've been seeing here at Civility Partners is that we're getting a lot of requests for upstander training outside of DNI. So we had this happen several times last year and the year before, especially, where an organization would call and say, hey, we have a DNI consultant and they're doing great work. However, we want you to run the upstander training because we don't want it to be specifically about diversity. When anybody witnesses anything that's not good, they should step up and say something. We don't want them to stop and go, oh, well, it's not about race, so I'm not going to say something. So this is, we've kind of been seeing people lean into D&I in a different way. And of course, the multi-generational workforce needs are different. So looking at diversity far beyond race and gender and sex and some of these, I don't want to say basic, but kind of main topics. There's so much more to diversity than the obvious. And so that's another way to talk about it. I see some good sharing going on. Keep it going. My advice for D&I, intertwine everything. So something we see with organizations is that they have an engagement initiative, they have maybe a employer branding initiative, they have a well-being initiative, and all these things are sort of operating separately. And that's not how it should work. Culture is everything. So intertwine all of these things together. And then audit your systems against the culture that you seek. So if you, oh, thanks, Crystal. Crystal, look at that. People, I love it. I'll have to let Zach know that he's got some more people coming. Auditing your systems and what that looks like, for example, is, and we do this for our clients, is that we say, okay, you're wanting to move your culture from kind of toxic and gossip and some bullying to high performance, and that includes respect. And then we audit processes. So we audit that organizational component to say, here are the ways that your organization is helping or hindering this culture that you want. So we're helping the organization figure out how to make adjustments. So I'm suggesting you do the same. Certainly training managers, there's that again. And if you have people who are engaging in toxic behavior, they need to be coached. We coach those people. Um, but, and again, if you're saying, hey, our CEO is a toxic person and a bully, and people are scared to death of that person. But here's an app to help you meditate during the workday or remind you to stand up and, go for a 3-minute walk. That's not aligned. That's misalignment. Let's see. Our DEI is embedded into our culture and supported through our culture advisory board. Love that, Amanda. We always suggest a culture, we call it the culture action team. Culture advisory board works too. Yeah, addressing workplace violence and harassment. And, so Cigar, if hopefully I'm saying that right, we do a harassment prevention training. We're here in California. And you know what our training is all about? It is all about interpersonal skills and respect and being empathetic, and we hit the wickets that we have to hit. Of course, a lot of the wickets that we have to hit in California are in the handout so that we can talk about real prevention, which is related to, and I don't think I ever say the word inclusive, but it's, part of what the conversation is. So just because you all were talking about manager training, I did want to put this in there. We do a fantastic manager training. This is an example of what it could look like. It's a 6-month course. There's one course each month, and then there's experiential activities in between. All of our trainings and programs are customized. So if you're interested in manager training, please do, send the QR code or do the QR code, and I'll put it up here and again in a minute. And we are happy to help your managers be more focused on the people they lead. Okay, so last handout here is this culture review. So again, the QR code takes you to an email. If you haven't done it already, do it now. It'll just hit send, and Jenny will respond. She'll send you all 3 things. Even if you only asked for one, she'll send everybody the same email. And we would love to get you these resources. So this document is really to help you kind of look at what is the culture we're trying to get to, what have I accomplished so far, and what do I need to be doing moving forward to get me closer to that in 2026. So it's looking back at 2025 and building a plan for 2026. Okay, so what's coming in 2026? Let's talk about it. Where do you think the workplace is heading? I'm curious if you think there are other things that we haven't already mentioned that we need to be talking about. Anything else? Let's see. Oh, thanks, Heidi. Heidi says Civility Partners rocks. I agree, Heidi. Yep, Tanya, as long as you did one QR code, you'll get all 3. Yeah, the political climate's not exactly slowing down, so that could be something we're going to continue to face, and it could get worse with more elections coming. Man, I think it's only been a year. We got 3 more, but a lot could go on between then. Better leadership, lack of a workforce, tariffs, yeah, losing good employees due to immigrants and the policies around that. Oh, you're welcome, Michelle. The imbalance between work and employees. Okay, thank you. Good, good. I gotta be selective about the slides that we're showing since we're running out of time here. So here are some data around return to the work. The last couple years we've seen a lot more mandates to return to work. Executives are citing more collaboration and culture and productivity as the reason you need to return to work. Lots of organizations are rolling out stricter policies. And then a 2025 Gallup survey found that 70% of remote capable employees prefer hybrid or fully remote work, while only 30% want to be mostly in the office. Kind of tying that back to your diversity programs, I'm a single mom, and that's one of my diverse qualities. If I couldn't come and go the way that I do with my two kids, I couldn't work here, right? Thankfully, I'm the owner and I can come and go. But if I had to, if I, I live in La Mesa, if you know San Diego, if I had to drive an hour to get to Del Mar every day to work because I was mandated to go there, I couldn't. I would not be able to do that because when they're sick or I have to pick them up, I would just miss out on so much work. So something that organizations need to be thinking about. So you've got to get comfortable with something called micro shifting. So I toot my own horn. I did a webinar on work-life integration a couple years ago, even. So now apparently this phrase is now called micro shifting. But considering that people work good at different times, I happen to do my best work around 9 a.m. in the morning. I don't do so great a work, in the afternoon after lunch, as many of us don't. I don't so much anymore, but I used to get a burst of energy after I put my baby down back when she was a baby. And I would do another 2 or 3 hours of work. So why can't I do my work at, 8 o'clock at night if I'm getting it done? Of course, if I have to be talking to clients during business hours, that's different. But why can't we intertwine work and life? Not so that work takes over and there's no balance, but so that our lives work better together. Another trend I think's coming is mandatory use of AI. Employees are going to be expected to integrate AI. Even if your company hasn't made any mandates just yet, it's not going away. At some point, they probably will, right? And just keeping in mind that AI is just another employee. It's not something to take over. If your company is growing, just like you might hire more people to take on certain jobs, you can hire AI to take on certain jobs, but somebody still has to manage it. Do you have any thoughts on how you could create a policy around micro shifting? We've been calling it flex time. Yeah, and I think that's the phrase for it, too, I've seen. Um, I think policies are nice. I might start with the look at your culture. So, policies inherently indicate I don't trust you, right? Versus if you create a culture of trust and then the policy puts guidelines around it. Um, so I don't know what your organization does and what all the nuances are, but if I were to create one off the top of my head for my own organization, I might be saying things like you have to hit your KPIs. If you're missing work or unable to attend, conference meetings or Zooms, that's a problem. And so I think actually, Miranda, I might start by interviewing your employees and asking them, and then you get their buy-in around micro shifting or flex time and like find out what your people need. Do they need to do work at 11 o'clock at night? Um, or do you need to say that they have to work 8 hours? So it depends on salary versus hourly and all those things. But I would start with culture. And actually, we can tie that back to Johnny Taylor, right? Our favorite HR leader. I did some blogs on this. Jenny, maybe you can post that blog in there. But one thing I talked about is that Johnny made some really clear policies around being late. If you were even 1 minute after 9, you had to check in with security. And Sherm kind of put a statement out that said, well, people have the ability to arrive any time between 8 and 9. That's a whole hour. So we're being flexible. If they're 1 minute late, They have to check in. Well, that is a sign of distrust, right? So rather than having a global policy about that, SHRM needed to find out why people are showing up at after 9. Is it because they have kids and they actually needed to expand that window to 9:15? Is it just because they don't care? Are they not performing? So, there was so much more. So don't go straight to a policy. That's my thought. I see other questions. I'm going to do a few more slides and then I'll answer your question, Liga. And while I'm talking, if you could elaborate on your question, that would be helpful. Normalizing recovery. Elaborate for me. Oh, thanks, Cigar. I appreciate that. Okay, so another trend, purpose-driven cultures attracting top talent. So the younger generations have grown up with access to the internet, so they have a much bigger idea of what's happening in the world than some of us did when we first joined the workforce. So younger generations see how ugly the world can be, and they get that much sooner than we did because of the internet, and because of Facebook and social media. So the more the younger generations coming into the workforce, the more they're going to expect that their work is impacting something bigger than them, that they're being treated well. They also grew up with assemblies around bullying in school, something we did not grow up with, right? So they're just much more in tune to social and emotional intelligence and impacting the world in a bigger way, that organizations aren't going to be able to escape that. Another trend, soft retirement and flexible careers rising. So older generations maybe aren't ready to leave. People live a lot longer. We don't retire at 55 anymore or 65. Um, Lots of people still working. So how can we utilize their knowledge and mentorship and have them still play a role in our organization's success? Um, well, so they can still be working in your organization. So those are some examples of how you might lean on that generation that's maybe heading out but not quite ready to go. And then another trend, the sixth one I'll mention here is culture repair and reconnection. We've had a lot of disruption. It's not going away with the political climate right now, but you can find some ways to stabilize your organization and your workforce in 2026. So again, start with some discovery. I'm going to talk again about the climate assessment. This is something we do. We would love to do it with you. These are some examples of the types of statements that we're having employees rate when we do a survey. Everything we do is customizable. Would love to help you figure out where your culture stands right now, what your people need to feel like the organization cares about their wellness and well-being. So we work with you to make sure we take a template survey that we start with, and then we adjust and add according to what the organization needs. So please do reach out on that. I might also suggest that if you're not interested in the survey, that at the very least you're interviewing your own staff, doing stay interviews, right? And asking these types of questions. We love to do listening sessions. We call them as part of the survey, as part of your climate assessment. So we can also take this on for you. And what you get when you work with us is some keywords and phrases that will help you describe the culture. You'll get information about what sets you apart as an organization, an understanding of what your employees need and want from you so that you can deliver on it. You'll understand what motivates people and guides their decisions and what's working and what's not. We also, once we have all that data, we help you build a plan with the data. So you have a very clear, here's what we're doing to adjust our culture over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And these are some examples of the types of things that end up on that plan. Okay. Lastly, I'll just say this is something new, so don't leave yet. This is something we're just introducing. So I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you your activity ID for HRCI or SHRM, and then we'll do the winners for the book. So we have a Train the Trainer toolkit. So that upstander training, it's our #1 requested training that we do. It's basically, hey, employees, don't bring everything to HR. You can solve some of your own problems, and here's how you do that. That's kind of the training. We are selling it. We have taken our 17 years of this training content that I started doing that when I first started. That was the first training I really started. And it's obviously evolved over the years, but it's $99 until the end of February. So you can get a white labeled, it's my slides that I deliver. It's got a facilitator's guide. It has a handout. It's everything that we do when we do upstander training for our clients. And I'm giving it to you for $99. So of course that will all be in the email that Jenny sends. And so I do hope that you'll take us up on that. So lastly, here are your IDs and do the QR code. And then Jenny has the winners of the book. Your names are Don DeGrassa, and Jenny will reach out to you, 5 winners. So Don DeGrassa, Rebecca Kigane, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Carmen Beckham, Clay Jones, and Conrad Shapira are the winners. So Jenny took down the names of very active people, and then she ran them through a little pick of random choices. So if you got that, don't worry. Jenny will be sending that to you. And to get the training, Charisse, Jenny will be putting that in the email that she's sending out. So the resources, if you do the QR code for the resources, that email will include the training or the link to get to the training. I know Jenny will also be sending out a recording to all of you, and I'm certain she will put the link in there as well. Ooh, Jenny put it in the chat for you as well. Thank you all. Love it. Love seeing you all. Thank you so much. And I'll see you at the next one. And I can stick around for a minute or two more if anybody has any other questions. Thank you all. Jenny, maybe put back on Respect or one of the songs from our playlist. Melissa, you can get the guide from the QR code. Just do the QR code or email info@civilitypartners.com. And that will get you what you need. The code is currently on your screen, Katrina. The SHRM code is 26-Y5HKH. Sherry, the name of the book is my book, Navigating a Toxic Work Environment or Workplace for Dummies. And you can certainly buy it on Amazon. I think it's $15. And then the 5 of you whose names I read, Jenny will reach out. Thank you. Cigar, you and I need to have a one-on-one. And also, thank you for being such a fan. I want to make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Oh, Jenny says, I forgot you can't share the audio. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. Looks like we're going to call it quits. Thank you so much. It rhymes Frogger, Jogger, or Blogger. Shogger. Shogger? Is that right? Sauger. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.